What's up guys, and welcome back to another video on what if Deku was the reincarnation of Mori Jin. Now, before I start off, I do want to state that thank you for everything you guys done, all your support, your comments, everything. I'm not gonna lie, it helps out a lot with me continuously uploading and making more of these videos, especially getting 100 subs. I'm not gonna lie, I truthfully never actually expected to even reach past 50, but as soon as we broke that, I was speechless and I was in awe. And now we're at 100, and it seems like we're just gonna keep going. So thank you guys so much for subscribing. Now, this is What If Deku Was Mori Jin. I am gonna state that I am gonna use information up to the most recent chapter of God of High School. So if you're not caught up to the most recent chapter, that isn't for that you have to pay for, you use the coins, whatever. And if you use webtoons, you know what those are. I am going to be using information up to the most recent chapter. So I'm just going to state that and throw that out there so you guys understand. And for the next 7 days, I'm going to be doing daily uploads, as I promised, for reaching 100 subs. We're going to get one today, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we're going to go Monday, Tuesday, and you'll get your final one on Wednesday. And then after we do that, then I'll go back to my regular uploading schedule every other day and 2 days on the weekends. So, starting off with this video. So, it has been 300 years after the first Gen X kid was born. After the original supreme god, Tsugen, that's how I pronounce the name, I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce it, had defeated Mori Jin in combat, because Mori Jin was not the same strength he was prior. The gods had decided to recreate the world and seal off memories of borrowed power and how life was prior, and change the story so Gen X personnel aren't actually Gen X. They are known as quirk users. And set a time limit on it for a certain amount of time until we reach when the first quirk user, or Gen X user, was able to link with the powers of a divine god of light, giving them the ability to shine. We now skip a couple years into the future. Inko, and I think his name is, Deku's mom and dad, are going throughout the forest. They're hiking on their honeymoon, mainly because, Deku's dad was kind of frustrated seeing how he couldn't have a son. There was an issue where he couldn't actually have a kid. While trekking through the forest, Inko could have sworn she heard a baby cry. She starts walking to it and finds a little kid with green hair laying on the floor, crying, with what appeared to be green crystals around it. Inko picked up the baby and the baby calmed down. She then runs back to Deku's dad and asks if we can keep him. And Deku dad is first like, whoa, what do you mean keep? We're stepping some boundaries here. You just found a child and you're not gonna do anything about it? And she said, well, we can adopt him and raise him as our own. And he thinks, seeing how he cannot have children, that yes, this would be an excellent idea, actually. Seems like the gods have given him new hope on actually being able to have a son and raise, even if it's not his directly biological son. So Inko looks down at the new baby, and she's like, I want to name him Izuku. And Deku's dad's like, yes. He will now forever be known as Izuku Midoriya. And that's how it starts. Deku was a very adventurous kid when he was young. At the age of 1, he could already run. He was instantly able to run, and it seems like most injuries that would harm him didn't harm him, almost like he had better resistance. So, the parents had assumed that maybe his quirk is that he just has a physical enhancement quirk, which gives him stronger capabilities on being able to defend himself. And they thought that was a relief because this kid's insane. He's climbing up walls, he's jumping on furniture, he's everywhere, and he's the moon and back by sundown. It's insane. So Deku one day was sitting in front of the TV at the age of 3. He really didn't talk with any other kids. He was more calm. And he saw a video about martial arts. Specifically, it was Taekwondo. Deku found Taekwondo and martial arts as a whole to be amazing. And then he started to practice. One day he walked up to his mom and asked his mom if he could start learning martial arts at like a dojo. Inko begrudgingly agrees to this. As the years go on, Deku starts training himself more physically. After Deku's father headed over to the USA to do some work over there, Inko took Deku to the quirk doctors, where it was found out that Deku didn't have a quirk, which kind of surprised Inko because Deku was pretty strong durability-wise. Almost nothing could really hurt him. But she digressed. She just figured that maybe he was just well built compared to most kids. Not to mention, those lessons he was taking and he was learning was really paying off. The next day, Deku started to complain about how he's getting bullied at practice. And Inko thinks, well, there isn't much I can do for that. And then she starts to think, and she's like, well, why don't we get out of the city then? Deku looks at her kind of confused. And she states, we're gonna leave the city. We're gonna go up into the mountain area where you can continue training. And we can live a peaceful life and not too many people will bully you because you don't have a quirk. And Deku was pretty excited for this because he was thinking about like kung fu movies or any sort of show he's watched where like they do training in the mountains and they come back down like 4 times as strong. And so then Deku and Inko move up to the mountains. Deku did online schooling to do his schooling work, mainly because he wanted to focus so much on training, and online schooling tends to be a little bit quicker than just traditional schooling. So Deku was not so smart, but he was intelligent enough to make sure he passed everything. But he really didn't understand how he knew the stuff, he just knew it and could write it down. Deku started practicing. He was learning Taekwondo, and he had reached an orange belt in it. And he understood the premises and understood Taekwondo. So he kept practicing and practicing more and more. And then he started to use some moves that he had created, or he had thought he had created. And a name came to mind when he was practicing this form of martial arts. And he called it Taekwondo. Now, if you don't know, Taekwondo is the Taekwondo Mori Jin uses as his primary fighting style. Deku practiced and trained Taekwondo for all of his years in the mountain, as well as doing online schooling. Deku was infatuated with heroes. He loved heroes. He loved the idea of them, and he loved everything about them. Eventually, Deku decided that he should... Sorry guys, something was stuck in my throat. That he should try to join UA. So, Deku, which is super athletically fit, not to mention pretty strong. His mom doesn't see his training, but Deku, when he actually does train hardcore, can destroy the ground beneath him with a single kick and sending air shockwaves through the air, which Deku thought was pretty impressive and pretty strong. But he figured that most kids should be ones to do it because he doesn't have a quirk, which we know most kids are not able to do it. Well, most kids don't train martial arts like Deku does. So Deku asks his mom if he can try to do a entrance exam. And his mom didn't think anything about it. Because, to be 100% honest, she knew Deku didn't have a quirk, but she trusted that Deku could do it. Deku started walking. And he found himself kind of lost. So he kept walking a little bit, and he found himself at a shrine. Now, this shrine was kind of a weird place, because in the shrine itself, there was an old man. The old man had an eye patch over his left eye, and he had what appeared to be a goatee. And there was a fiend set up in the back that was holding a gray pole. Deku walked over to the man, and he says, "Hello, sir, where are we?" And the man looked up at Deku, and he says, "Oh, we're in a location known as the Sun Palace, made to honor a close friend of mine who passed away a long time ago." And Deku heard this, and he was kind of saddened, and he was like, "He passed away a long time ago? What was his name?" "Oh, he was a good friend of mine. His name was Mori Jin." And Deku goes, "Mori Jin? Why does that sound so familiar?" And then Deku asks for his name, and he replies, "I'm Dawai." Dawai? I always called him Drew in my head, but I know that's not his name. His name is Dawi. I think there's an L as well. The whale. Dawai. But most people tend to call me the Jade Emperor now, or the Sage of the East, or at least that was what I was called at a time. And Deku explains, "So you're a Sage of the East?" "Yes, I'm also a pretty capable fighter." And Deku hears this, and Deku, for some reason, always loved to fight. So while talking to this old man who was easily looked to be in his 80s, he said, "Can you fight against me? I've been training a type of martial arts that I call ruyi taekwondo." And then the man who called himself the Y, or the Jade Emperor as he'll be known to Deku, instantaneously raised an eyebrow. And he's like, "Ruyi taekwondo? Did anyone teach it to you?" "No. I came up with the techniques by myself." Which intrigued the Jade Emperor even more. He stands up, and he's like, "Let's take this out into the forest. I'm guessing Ruyi Taekwondo is a pretty dangerous thing when it's at full strength." And Deku's like, "Yeah, I can easily destroy the ground in front of me." And then the Jade Emperor starts to remember back in the tournament he had done all those many years ago, where his friend Mori Jin had used a fighting style called Ruyi Taekwondo and was able to obliterate the ground in front of him. And he's like, "Wait until the Witch of the West hears this." And Deku asked, "What did you say?" And the Jade Emperor replies, "Oh, it was nothing. I apologize." To kind of explain what happened, seeing how both Dawai and Mira both have a portion of the Jade Emperor's power, they were able to extend their lifetimes way beyond that of a normal human, but nowhere compared to a god. Back to what I was stating, though. After going back in the background, the Jade Emperor said, "Come and attack me," as he started to get in a karate stance. And Deku's like, "Oh, you do karate?" And the Jade Emperor responds, "Yes, I did train in a form of karate." Deku starts to attack. He first starts with a triple kick, which hits the first temple, the second temple, and the third temple. The Jade Emperor let himself be hit by this attack to see if it was similar to Mori Jin's. And it was extremely similar. The Jade Emperor, even more intrigued, then using a light punch, punches Deku away, sending him flying backwards with a small shockwave in front of him, breaking the ground underneath him. And Deku's even more impressed. He's like, I guess I can't hold it back against you. I guess I gotta go all out. And Deku started releasing a fury of kicks and knees. I can't remember every single name of the attack, so I'm just going to say it's kicks and knees. But you can imagine any sort of fiends. And then afterwards, Deku launches a massive kick towards him. And then he says, "True roundhouse kick." Afterwards, Deku spins his body using the circular force to kick upwards, sending a massive tornado being created, knocking the Jade Emperor off his balance for a second before he activated his sacred beast and fired a bubble to disperse the wind. Afterwards, he deactivated his sacred beast and he's like, maybe you have more promise than I expected. Come back to the Temple of Sun, why don't you? And Deku follows the Jade Emperor to the Temple of Sun. And inside it, Deku sees the pole. And he almost reached out to the pole, and the Jade Emperor is intrigued by this again. And Jade Emperor says, "You can take it into your hands." Deku does. He picks it up, and he easily holds it in his hands, moving it around, not even being affected by the weight of the object in his hands. And Jade Emperor sees this, and he's now almost sure that this is the reincarnation. So he's like, the pole's name is Yaoi. Now, Yaoi is a special pole. It could extend itself and enlarge itself to extreme degrees. And Deku was confused by this, and he goes, how can a pole do that? That doesn't make sense. The Jade Emperor was kind of thrown off by this because he figured that once he touches Yaoi, he should at least regain partially his memories. But no, it seems like no memories were regained, even though he did somehow retain the ability to do Taekwondo, which was impressive enough. Afterwards, the Jade Emperor says, "For having a good fight against me, I'll allow you to take it." And Deku looks at the Jade Emperor and he says, "But isn't this yours? Isn't this your fame to mourn your friend?" And the Jade Emperor says, "Oh, no, that's just a thing I was holding on to for my other friend. I had it there because it looked good." And Deku was like, "Oh, okay, if that's the situation, then I believe it." And then the Jade Emperor reminds himself on how gullible Mori Jin was. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, this lines up. This lines up with his personality perfectly." Afterwards, the Emperor offers to teach Deku on how to use it. So he states that once it accepts you to be its master, you can basically do whatever you want with it. You can extend it, contract it, make it so small that it fits in the pocket, increase its weight, decrease its weight, make it so large. And Deku's like, "So what is it?" And the Jade Emperor kind of puts his fingers beneath his head and he explains, "Well, you see, I guess the best way to explain it is that it's an item that is not from this world." And Deku's like, "It was made by aliens?" And he's like, "No, yes, but no. No, it's not made by aliens, but yes, it's made by aliens." And Deku looks at the pole in his hand and he's like, "Okay, I better not question anymore. And it seems like the pole is calling to me." And the Jade Emperor commands it and says, "Command it to shrink. See if it shrinks." And Deku says, "Yaoi, contract." And the pole, which was about the height of his body, contracted to about down to his waist. Deku was immensely impressed. And then the Jade Emperor says, "Now ask it to grow bigger. Yaoi, grow bigger." And then it grows bigger back to being the full size. And then he says, "Try to see if you can make it smaller and make its width smaller in diameter. Yaoi, contract." which brings it about to the size of the palm of his hand. Still being as thick, about 3 inches in diameter, he then says, Yaoi gets smaller. After saying this, it went down to 1 inch, being able to easily fit in his pocket without even any need. And Deku, being impressed by this, takes it out of his hand, and he's like, can I try to make it go big? And then the Jade Emperor says, it would be best if we go to the woods for that again out back, and try to face it away from my house. Deku agrees. Deku then says, Yaoi, expand. And then Yaoi just grows to an absurd length, being about 30 feet away. And then he says, Yaoi, get bigger. And then Yaoi goes from being 1 inch in diameter to 20 feet in diameter. And Deku's palm is just holding it straight. And Deku's like, so how's it not falling out of my hands? And then the Jade Emperor says, well, Yaoi accepts you as its master. So that means it will stay in your hand unless if you want it to leave your hand. And Deku says, Yaoi, contract, bringing it back to its smaller form where it can fit in his pocket. Which Deku does put it in his pocket. And he says, thank you. I really appreciate this. And the Jade Emperor says, no problem. How about you train with me for a little bit? What are you doing and where are you going? And Deku explains, well, I'm going to do the hero exam. It's about a month's time to get down there. And there's about 5 months left. And the Jade Emperor says, well, why don't you train with me for all 4 of those months remaining, and then I can help you get down there quicker. And Deku shakes his head up and down, going, okay, yeah, I got you. Deku and the Jade Emperor kept training. Deku trained with Yaoi. He wanted to get a better understanding of this staff that he had. He started to learn from the Jade Emperor, who said, to use Yaoi to its fullest extent, you must know how to use the staff. The previous user of the staff was very, very good with it. Could easily take out hundreds of opponents in seconds. And Deku asked, when was the previous user? When was Yaoi last used? And the Jade Emperor says, about 400 years ago. And Deku thinks this is weird, because that means this staff was around in the 1600s. Because for them, it's only 2020. So that means it was around the 1620, when we know it was about 2020 still, before it got out of high school. But I'm going to say it's in 1960s. God, this timeline is so messed up. But we really know it's not 2020, it's 320, which puts got out of high school at 2020. Okay, there we go. Timeline's all fixed again. Deku is impressed that it stayed in such good condition. And then the Jade Emperor explains that Yaoi really cannot be damaged except for beings of a extremely strong level. And Deku says, like All Might? And he shakes his head, saying, no, not even All Might should be wants to destroy this. Or even damage it, really. It is just that strong. And Deku's like, if All Might can't damage it, and All Might's the strongest person around, who can? And he holds up his, and the Jade Emperor kind of puts on a thinking face. And he's like, maybe I should explain to you who has the capabilities of destroying it. And Deku's kind of intrigued by this, and he follows the Jade Emperor into a building offshoot next to the Sun Temple, where Deku started to sleep at. The Jade Emperor took Deku into a room. The room had what appeared to be a camera on it. But Deku hadn't seen this camera. It looks a little bit more advanced than the cameras he knows. And Deku says, is that a camera? Yes, it was used to record footage during a tournament. And Deku was impressed by this. But what happened after the tournament was very important. And Deku asked, what do you mean what happened after? And afterwards, the Jade Emperor says, don't worry about it, just look at it. Deku sees 3 people. And he sees a bunch of what looks to be monsters. One of the persons looks very familiar. He had brown hair and a weird spike formation with a green sleeping patch on his eyes, as well as he wore a white tank top and a weird hoodie around his waist with blue jeans. He's like, "Who's that?" And then the man said, "That was Mori Jin. Mori Jin was the previous user of Yaoi before you." And Deku thought for a second. He's like, "Wait a minute. That was meant to be 300 years ago. That would have placed this in the 1700s. Why does it look like it's nowadays Japan?" And then the Jade Emperor shushes Deku. Deku saw 2 other people, a white-haired female and a black-haired male, who resembled the Jade Emperor quite a lot. They start to battle against their monster opponents, taking out and getting attacked by them. Eventually, a giant weird creature showed up on top. Afterwards, it took out Mori Jin, and Deku felt a sharp pain just right where Mori Jin had felt it, or had gotten attacked. It felt so realistic that Deku had to check his shirt to make sure that he didn't just get stabbed. Afterwards, he sees the man fall. The man was using yaoi, but also had some other stuff. What looked to be like a weird armor that formed around him, and what seemed to be a cloud, as well as a bottle. Deku thought that all these items were quite weird and random, but he didn't say much about them. Afterwards, a bright light shone, and everything shut off. And Deku asked, "What was that?" And the Jade Emperor explains, "That was the battle 300 years ago." And Deku questions, going, "The battle 300 years ago? What? I thought you said that was from a tournament." "Yes, there was a tournament called God of High School." See, the timeline is off. And Deku thinks, the timeline? What is he on about? What's going on? The Jade Emperor explains, "Now, see, we're actually in the year 2320. Okay, but how? When we realized the 300-year gap? No, that's because of the people you saw that we were fighting against. We? Does that mean you were there too?" "Yes." "Wait, how old are you?" "Currently 340. Thank you for making me feel old, you douche." And Deku was like, whoa, this is a totally different side of the Jade Emperor they never saw before. And the Jade Emperor stated, "Sorry about that, but the man that you saw die was Mori Jin." And Deku asked, "Mori Jin? Why do I feel like I've heard that name before?" And the Jade Emperor states, "You probably have, because that's you." And Deku was like, "Huh?" And basically, Jade Emperor explains that you are Mori Jin, but you're not Mori Jin. And Deku, even more confused, goes, "What?" And he explains, "God, you're just as clueless as him too. You are the reincarnation of yourself." "Oh. So that's why I can use yaoi?" "Yeah. For example, hand over yaoi to me." Deku then hands over yaoi to the Jade Emperor, and the Jade Emperor struggles to even hold it in his hands, as he is being physically forced downwards. And Deku's like, what did I do?" And Jade Emperor's like, "You didn't do anything. This is just one of the effects of yaoi, where it becomes nearly unbearable to pick up unless if you're a supreme deity or a god, or the one that yaoi calls its master." Deku's like, so if I'm Mori Jin, and that was me, I died? Yes. Your memories will probably start flooding back, and you'll probably be more similar to Mori Jin back then. And Deku asks, what do you mean? Well, see, Mori Jin could, previous you could transform in between two different base forms. He had his Mori Jin form and his Mori Dan form. What? Imagine it like being at level 100 and trying to go up a level in his Mori Jin form. He was already maxed out. He couldn't. It would take immense training. But in the Mori Dan form, where he was like a level 1, little training could boost him a lot, which then carried over to his Mori Jin form. So you're stating like it's like getting bonus levels. So every level I get as Mori Dan would add over to Mori Jin. Yes. So how did he lose? Well, you see, Mori Jin was still recovering. Recovering? See, prior to what happened in those events, he was betrayed by a person that he trusted, had all of his powers sealed, as well as was increasingly damaged after fighting Satan. Whoa, Satan? Yeah, we fought gods in the past. Okay. And what was that thing you summoned? And he's like, oh, so you did see my summoned beast. Yes, I did. Is that a god or is that a monster? And he's like, no, it's a sacred beast. Basically, there's something called power borrowers, or at least there used to. There isn't anymore. Okay. And what does it do? What do they do? Well, you see, power borrowers tend to power borrow from gods. Borrow power from gods. Or from human spirits or dead personnel. See, now, you won't have a borrow power. And neither will anyone else anymore. And Deku gets confused and he asks why. Well, see, there's this crazy man named Mujin Park who basically decided that he would kill everyone and everything. He had betrayed you in the past. And Deku starts to see a slight remembrance and tears start to roll down his eyes. And he's like, why am I crying? I have a vision of a man with gray hair. And he was like, that's your previous grandfather. Deku was shocked and stunned, thinking that he has lived an entire... I am so sorry about that, guys. I had no clue when that happened. That's my bad. I have no clue when that happened, and I will apologize once again right here, right now. I accidentally swiped up for people who were listening. That was your grandfather. And that was the reasoning Mujin Park had killed your grandfather, was so that he could kill you because you would be in a blind fit of rage. Deku understood. So he's like, so I'll start gaining my memories back slowly over time? Yes, you will. You'll remember your past, you'll remember your past, your past, and now. And Deku was like, what? Well, see, you originally Sun Wukong, or whatever it's called in actual God of High School. It's Sun Wukong, and is what it's based off of. And afterwards, you became Mori Jin, and then you became Mori Dan, and then you became Izuku Midoriya. So you have 3, I guess you can say, past lives that you can look back on with experience and information. For example, the Taekwondo you were doing was taught to you by your grandfather, who taught you on how to do Taekwondo. Deku understood this. He's like, okay. Afterwards, Deku had started training with the Jade Emperor, which he slowly started to remember events in the past, everything else, and was able to even use the Blue Dragon Kick and the Double Blue Dragon Kick, which was the Mori Jin original, which surprised the Jade Emperor on the first time because he hadn't seen the kick in so long. Afterwards, Deku headed out to UA. With some assistance, of course. He got launched over there by using Repel Force. Deku was launched into the city. Well, to be more accurate, he was launched on the outside of the water at Deku Beach. Which All Might and, well, two personnel, both blonde-haired, kind of saw a giant splash in the water and ran to check it out. All Might instantaneously buffed up, thinking that this could be a bad situation. Out came Deku, who started to walk out of the water, and he's like, "You didn't have to send me this way. God damn it, Dewey." He also slowly started calling the Jade Emperor Dewey, or Drew. I want to call him Drew, but I know his name is not Drew. Afterwards, he sees two people, and he sees All Might. He's like, "Oh my god, All Might." And All Might's like kind of shocked. This kid just was chucked into this lake, made a giant water explosion, and now he's walking out unscathed. Not to mention, he's wearing a tank top and jeans. And Muriel's like, "Hey, kid, are you right?" And Deku explains, "Oh, yeah. This is easy compared to the training I had to do earlier." And All Might looks at Deku and he's like, "Easy? What kind of training are you doing?" "Well, for example, I had to destroy the entire forest with one kick." And All Might instantaneously hears this, and he more or less thought of it as a joke. And he starts to laugh. He's like, "Ha ha ha, you have a great sense of humor, kid." And Deku's like, "But I'm not joking." As Deku then reaches into a pocket and takes out this, and he's like, "You see this?" And All Might and Mirio, which we don't know it's Mirio, Deku doesn't know it's Mirio, but it's Mirio, both see him hold it in his hand. And he says, "Yowie, expand." And the pole expands to large enough to meter. He's like, "This is Yowie. It's a bow staff I had a long time ago." And both All Might and Mirio are looking really like dumbfounded at this spear that was about the size of a pencil before, now being a full-size bow staff, which Deku easily can swing around. And Deku says this isn't even the full extent. And then Deku faces towards the ocean, and he holds out his hand and he says, "Yowie, expand." And Yowie expands to its larger form, being about 30 feet in length and about 20 feet in width, shocking both All Might and Mirio easily. And then he says, "Yowie, contract." Yowie turned back to the size of the pencil, and then he sticks into his pocket. All Might is just speechless by this, wondering, what is that kid's quirk? I can see what he means by destroying entire... Wait, no, he said he has to destroy entire forest with just a kick. This is him with a bow staff that can infinitely expand and grow bigger? That's insane. Afterwards, Deku's like, "Don't worry about it. If you don't understand, it's quite normal." Deku then says that he'll be participating in the UA entrance exam tomorrow, and that you guys should watch him because he's going to rank first, as Deku just proudly walks away. All Might looks towards Mirio, and he's like, "Mirio, yeah, I think we're going to have to watch this kid." And Mirio's like, I couldn't agree anymore, sir. Just so you know, Mirio is going to receive one for all. I know I've never given Deku one for all in any of my what-ifs, but Mirio is going to receive one for all. And the next day, when Deku woke up, he walked towards UA. He took the practical exam, or the written test, not the practical exam, and aced it easily. Afterwards, he took the written test. The practical exam. As soon as Deku found out it was just destroying robots, Deku realized that he would have to be more controlled when he used Yowie, because if he used it to a dangerous degree, it could injure the other students, causing multiple issues for other personnel. Deku then started to walk out. He started to attack robots, easily demolishing them one after another with just his kicks alone. He was able to hold up enough power not to totally decimate the ground underneath him, but the ground did break underneath him. Some kids saw this one, were impressed by Deku's pure power, thinking he just had a strength enhancing quirk, that gave him insane strength. Deku went on, smashing robot after robot after robot after robot after robot after robot, killing hundreds of robots easily, decimating them in seconds, running quicker and quicker to the next robot, just easily kicking and taking out robots left and right. Suddenly, he felt the ground started to shake and heard a scream. Deku quickly ran over, and he saw a girl trapped under a boulder and saw a giant robot. Deku then took out Yaoi out of his pocket and said, "Yaoi, expand!" quickly launching it towards the girl. The boulder that was on the girl's legs, destroying the boulder. But the girl still couldn't move. Deku thought, "Shoot, I messed up. I should have attacked the robot first." Then Deku says, "Yaoi, retract." Quickly flips around Yaoi and says, "Yaoi, expand!" and shoots Yaoi straight through the center of the robot. And then he says, "Yaoi, expand again!" And then Yaoi got bigger, completely destroying the insides of the robot. Afterwards, he says, "Yaoi, contract." And contract Yaoi about to the size of the pencil. Then he quickly ran towards the girl and helped the girl up. The girl had a broken leg. He took the girl over to the rescue station and dropped her off. Afterwards, Deku left because the entrance exam had ended. Deku figured he did pretty well, probably even got first. Afterwards, he went home to an apartment that his mom had gotten him before he left. Deku had almost no furniture in his apartment. He never really found a use for it and just laid down and slept. Deku then the next day woke up and went training. He trained every day for the next 2 weeks, constantly trying to improve his strength and get stronger. Afterwards, a letter came in telling that Deku had made it in and that he was ranked number 1 and he would be in class 1A. Deku says, "Yes, I did it." Deku was super excited about this. Deku then started to walk out and then walked to UA the next day. He entered the classroom and saw a weird yellow-haired kid and a blue-haired kid. The blue-haired kid with glasses was yelling at the yellow-haired kid. Deku really didn't think much about them, so he took a seat and then he started... Well, he didn't take a seat. Never mind, scratch that. He started to do exercises in the class to physically prepare himself. Bakugo saw this and was like, "Look at this shitty musclehead." And Deku looked back at Bakugo and he was like, "What was that?" as he jumped back up on his feet. And Bakugo was like, "Psh, nothing." And then Ida quickly ran over to Deku and said, "You're the one who ranked first in the entrance exam. You're amazing. You not only took out a 0-pointer, but easily defeated multiple robots. What is your quirk? Is it strength enhancing and super speed? And if so, what was that attack you used against the robot? It looked to be a pull." And Deku explains, no, he doesn't have a quirk. He's just physically trained his body to the max and has broken his limits, which shocked Ida, because Deku was almost as quick as Ida at this point. Not to mention the physical strength he was experiencing easily busted robots. As well as that pole, and he's like, "Okay, but what's that pole?" And Deku explains, "It's Yaoi. Would you like to hold it?" As Deku planes it out, and Ida looks at the pole in Deku's hand, and he's like, "That's not the pole you used, is it?" And Deku says, "Yes, Yaoi can change its size and its length according to my will." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I will." So Deku says, "Hold out your hand." And Deku gets kind of mischievous grinned, as Ida does. He's like, "It won't be that heavy. You seem to have no trouble lifting it." Deku drops it in Ida's hand. Ida's hand just slams to the floor, breaking the ground underneath him. As Ida starts to scream, he's like, "Ah, my hand!" And Deku was like, "Oh, sorry, bro." As he quickly picks up Yaoi and sticks it back into his pocket. Ida's hand is just totally fluffed at this point. And then Deku was like, "I'm so sorry, I should have explained. Yaoi is extremely heavy. think of it as being able to condense materials to a very high density, making it extremely heavy on the smaller forms, and it still retains its weight even in the larger ones. Ida's like, that makes no sense. And Deku says, yeah, it's magic. Well, let's just call it short, it's magic. I couldn't understand it either. That was the best way I could make it sound, because it's always heavy. And Ida's like, okay. And then a girl tapped Deku back on his shoulder. He turned around. He saw a brunette-haired girl. The girl who looked like he had saved yesterday. She explained that her name was Uraraka, and that she was grateful that he had saved her. And Deku said, oh no, don't worry about it. I just didn't want to see another fighter go down. And Uraraka kind of looked confused and said fighter, and then Deku explained, well, yes, it seems like your abilities are pretty well powerful. My friend has the same abilities, yet it causes him a lot of strain to even use them for more than a minute, yet you seem to be using them for an extended period of time just fine. Uraraka explains, no, I really can't. I get very nauseous and feel like I'm about to vomit when I do anything more than my body weight for an extended period of times. And Deku's like, oh, okay. Out of nowhere, a yellow beanbag hops into the room. And everyone turns around to look at this yellow beanbag, sleeping bag style thing, and sees that's Mr. Aizawa, their sensei. And he says, get on your uniforms, we're going out to do a test. And Ida's kind of confused and questioning this, going, but sir, we've already done a test to get in. And Aizawa's like, yeah, you might have done a test for them, but you haven't done a test for me. And he looks over at Deku, and he remembers what he saw while in the viewing deck and saw that Deku's abilities are kind of similar to his friend's ability that had passed, but he doesn't put much more thought to it, thinking that it's just the weapon that's similar, not the actual ability itself. Afterwards, Deku and all of them went out, and Aizawa handed Deku a ball and said, Deku was the farthest length you threw it in school. And Deku explains, well, you see, I was up in the mountains, so I never really did any physical ascension tests. And Aizawa looked confused, and he's like, but you're super ripped. And Deku was like, yes, I trained in multiple different martial arts. Which Ojiro kind of chimed in and was like, you trained in martial arts? Yes, I especially created a new martial art called Rui Taekwondo. And Ojiro's like, can you teach me this later on? And Deku goes, yeah, I can attempt to teach you. It's very demanding on the body and could totally mess you up if you're not careful. And Ojiro's like, okay. Deku then takes the ball, and he's like, am I permitted to use a weapon? And Aizawa's like, knock yourself out. So Deku pulls Yaoi out from his pocket, and he says, Yaoi, expand. Yaoi expands, and then Deku basically chucks the ball up into the air and says, Yaoi, get bigger and expand. He says this to Yaoi as Yaoi hits the ball and sends the ball flying. As Yaoi expands just as quickly as the ball is being moved, the ball gets launched out of the atmosphere of Earth as people start to see a giant, humongous pillar about the size of the fucking UA high building just being in the air that's outside of the atmosphere, just sitting there. And Deku's like, okay, I did it. And I was always shocked by this because it's huge. And he's like, shrink that down. And Deku's like, oh yeah, sorry, shrink. And Yaoi shrinks back down into Deku's palm of the size of his hand and puts it in, and the scanner says infinite. And Aizawa just doesn't even know what to say at this point. This kid literally just launched a pole out into the atmosphere, outside of the atmosphere to launch a ball. Everyone else is shocked at Deku's pure ability. And everyone else did the test, and the rankings are still the same. It went Deku and Uraraka tied for first, and then you had Bakugo, and then you had Todoroki, and then you had everyone else below it. The speed test came out with Ida coming first, with Deku being quickly behind, and then everyone else followed. And then the grip test came out to Deku and every other basically physical test except for the side-to-side, which Mineta got first. No one got expelled. And that's where I'm going to be leaving it off, guys. Once again, I am sorry for accidentally swiping up on my phone. I do apologize for that. If you liked it, hit the like button. And if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. And until tomorrow, goodbye.